calls and movies all day, and I'm like, my hair is getting bigger and frizzier by the minute. Okay, because it's a rainy day. So I want to catch up the Night Fairy, and we're on chapter 7, which is the praying mantis. And before we read it, I want you to remind you that she's the size of 2 acorns now, and a praying mantis, a female praying mantis, full grown, is certainly bigger than she is. They have razor sharp front legs, and they're dangerous. They're dangerous. And so when I read this chapter 7, the praying mantis, I'm worried that it's going to be a battle. So let's find out. So the praying mantis, chapter 7, and then we can see from the icon or the chapter marker that there's the praying mantis, and it looks like it's towering over the leaves and the thorns of the barberry. Okay. As Florrie tore through the tall grass, her thoughts flew ahead of her. She knew she must work quickly. She had to fetch her dagger, warm the eggs, and free the hummingbird before the spider came back. When she reached the cherry tree, she flung back her head and bellowed, "Scuggle!" The cherry leaves shook. Scuggle peered down at her. "Have you anything to eat?" asked the squirrel. "No," answered Florrie. "Scug, would you do me a favor? I need to get to my house quickly. Will you give me something to eat?" Florrie rolled her eyes. "No," she began, and then she changed her mind. Florrie wants something so much that she's going to make a bargain with Scuggle to get what she needs to do. To get what she needs to take care of this problem. Okay, so will you give me something to eat? Florrie rolled her eyes. "No," she began, and then she changed her mind. "Yes. If you carry me up to my house, I'll give you some dried cherries and sunflower seeds." The squirrel was at her side before she finished the word cherries. "Cherries! I love cherries." "You're mean, Florrie, to keep them all to yourself. I love them. I want them. Give them to me." In 2 seconds, they were at the door of Florrie's house. "Don't go away," Florrie commanded, sliding off the squirrel's tail. "Wait here." She scrambled into her dim little house. She found her dagger. Oh, she'll need her dagger. And she slipped it into the sash around her waist. Then she picked up the grass quilt she had woven. She rolled it tightly and lashed it to her back. Now she'll need that blanket for something to keep them warm. So there's the picture. Look at Scuggle. Look how big Scuggle is. This is the wall of her house. Scuggle is sitting, the front of her house. So the door, that little hole door, is right here where she's in the inside of the house. And Scuggle, can you see that Scuggle's sitting perched? Oh, actually, there's the hole. Let me just tell you. So Scuggle's perched on that peg, and look at Scuggle's hands coming through the hole. So it's just a little bit up high. And then here's Florrie. She's got her dagger. She has magic too, so her magic's not fully in, and so she'll still need the dagger. So Scuggle's paws were in the doorway, groping wildly. Florrie went to her little store of food and hauled out 4 dried cherries and 5 sunflower seeds. One by one, she passed them to the squirrel. That is so much food for a small fairy, and not enough for a squirrel. "That's enough," she said, after the 5th seed. "Don't you have any more?" asked Scuggle. "Yes, but you can't have them right now." Scuggle's paws went on opening and shutting. "Yes, I said that's enough," Florrie said. "Later." "But now is when I'm hungry." Florrie was tempted to sting him. "If you take me where I want to go, I'll give you more seeds tomorrow. I'll give you all of them," she said rashly. When you say something rashly, it's because you want something so bad you don't think of how that's going to work. So as she gives away all her seeds, all her stores of food, she won't have any for the winter. But she wants something so badly that she just rushes in. Rashly, she says it. Okay. "And all the cherries?" Florrie looked over her little stock of food. She had had to lug the sunflower seeds up the tree 2 by 2. The cherries had been even heavier, and it was hard work to pit them. She sighed. "All right, but tomorrow, not today. Tomorrow morning?" "First thing," Florrie promised. "Now, get your dirty little mitts out of my house. I'm coming out." She climbed through the doorway. Scuggle was just outside the house. He nibbled the grass quilt. Dry, he said sadly, and took another little nip. One more bite, and I'm going to sting you, warned Florrie. Let me onto your back. He turned his tail to her. She climbed on and let him flip her to the space behind his ear. Where to? Florrie hesitated. She wanted Scuggles' help, but she didn't want him to get close to the hummingbird's eggs. The fish pond, she said, after thinking it over. Hurry. The squirrel leaped to the ground. With dizzying speed, he arrived at the edge of the fish pond. Florrie gazed into the glassy water. She saw the goldfish gliding below. I hear they're good to eat, remarked Scuggle, but I've never been able to catch any. Raccoon catches them first. So wait a minute. Raccoon come to hunt the fish? You need to take that and put it in your pocket. Raccoon. Florrie felt a pang of fear as she thought of Raccoon. She recalled the thing that no animal and no fairy should ever forget. The world is full of predators. She glanced up at the sky. The blue was dimmer, and the air was growing cool. Soon the bats would come out to hunt. You can go now, she told Scuggle, but he squatted down next to her, his eyes fixed on the goldfish. We might be able to catch him if we worked as a team, he said hopefully. We're a good team, aren't we, Florrie? Remember how you used your knife to get the suet out of the grease box and how I ate it up? That was teamwork, wasn't it? I don't know if that is teamwork, actually. Florrie wanted to scream. She didn't want to sting Scuggle. She didn't even want to hurt his feelings, but she wanted him to go away. She could see the barberry bush from where she stood. It was going to be a hard climb, and every minute the eggs were getting colder. She dared not begin until Scuggle left. He could whisk up the fence post and gobble the eggs before she climbed to the first branch. She closed her eyes and trying to think of something that would distract him. The door of the brick house opened. The giantess came out with a jar of seeds. Look, Scuggle, Florrie cried. The giantess is going to fill up the seed tube. Hurry up so you can be the first one there. Scuggle bounded to his feet and scampered to the top of the fence. Florrie blessed the giantess as she lumbered down the porch steps. Once the seed tube was full, Scuggle would be busy. Then a frightful thought crept into her mind. What if the giantess stopped by the fish pond? Heavy footsteps shook the ground. Florrie crouched down, making herself smaller. The shadow of the giantess passed over her, but the giantess didn't see her. She sauntered past the fish pond, up the stairs, and into the great house. Once the door closed, Florrie breathed a sigh of relief. Now for the barberry bush, she said, and sprang to her feet. The climb took all her skill. The barberry bush was leathery and tough, with purple leaves and cruel thorns, which is true. I mean, they're terrible bushes. Okay, one of the thorns raked Florrie's forearm, leaving a long, painful scratch. Florrie stopped to lick the blood away. Then she looked up. Her heart stood still. A praying mantis squatted in the barberry bush. He was less than 4 inches from the nest. Each year I read this, I always forget that it's a male, because they should have, Laura Amy Schlitz should have made it a female because they're bigger than the males, but okay, it's fine. He was less than 4 inches from the nest. As Florrie gaped at him, his antennas twitched. He turned his head as if she knew she was there. His head was triangular, with bulging green eyes on the sides. Florrie went cold. She knew how dangerous he was, how suddenly he could strike. She also knew what was in store if he caught her. His spiky forelegs would dig into her flesh. The mantis would lift her to his bristled mouth and bite through her neck. Then he would eat her body, saving her head for last. She opened her mouth to say her stinging spell, then she shut it. If she stung him, he would dart away from her, closer to the nest. She wondered whether he was climbing toward the eggs or away from them. She wished she could work her seeing spell and find out if the nest was empty or full, but she dared not close her eyes. Night fairy, hissed the mantis, where are your wings? The word wings gave Florrie an idea. She backed up against a thorny branch. My wings! Her voice was high and panicky. Help me! I've ripped my wings on the thorns. I can't fly. It worked. The mantis turned his long body toward her. He was eager for easy prey. Florrie wanted to flee. He was a dreadful thing, and her skin crawled as he came closer. But with every step he took, he was farther from the nest. Night fairy. His voice was as soft as a lullaby. Night fairy, will you be my prey? Hey, he's doing charming. He's doing the charming. Just like Big Bad thinks he can do in Little Wolf. And who else is charming? Oh, snakes for sure. And praying mantises now. So, his huge green eyes seemed to be casting a spell over her. He swayed back and forth. In spite of herself, Flory began to sway with him. All at once he struck. His spike legs sliced the air. Flory sprang to one side and shrieked her stinging spell. Never before had she stung so hard. The mantis's body jerked. Go, shouted Flory. Go, or I'll sting you again. The mantis's eyes were full of hatred. He lurched back as if to attack, and Flory drew her dagger, and instead of leaping backwards, she threw herself forward under his forelegs. She slashed upward, missing his throat by a hair. The double attack, dagger and stinger, was too much for the insect. He spread his wings and flew away. Flory watched until he was out of sight. In spite of her victory, her heart was sick. She was afraid she had come too late, that the eggs had been eaten or grown too cold. Nevertheless, she sheathed her dagger and began the last part of the climb. The nest above her was the size of a walnut shell. The hummingbird had woven it from dry cobwebs and covered the outside with lichen so that it blended in with the old wooden fence. It's really hard to find hummingbird nests because they look so much like where they are. Flory caught hold of the edge with her hands, hooked one ankle over the rim, and slid down inside. She's so small that she can slide into a walnut-sized nest. The eggs were still there, two of them as white as pearls, and when Flory touched them, she knew at once that they were too cold. They ought to have been warmer, but the creatures inside were alive. She could feel them, curled tight inside the shells, one male, one female. As she spread her fingers over the shells, she felt a glow of triumph and something else, something strong and sweet and steady. She had saved the unborn birds from the praying mantis, and now she would save them from the cold. Oh, this is going to be big magic first. It's going to be big magic. She pressed her palms flat against the shells and began to sing. She sang a spell of comfort for small living things, and as she sang, she thought of the warmest things she knew: strong sunlight on black stone, heat lightning on summer nights, the candles that the giantess burned on the patio table. The heat of her thoughts surged through her hands. She could feel the unhatched birds yearning for it. By the time she finished singing, the two little eggs hummed with life. Flory pushed them together and tucked the grass quilt over them. Now, she said, you must stay warm until your mother comes home. She stooped down and she kissed the quilt twice. Two. I'm going to bring her home soon, she added, but you'll be warm through the night. And she felt to make sure her dagger was still at her side, and then she wrapped both hands around the nearest barberry twig, kicked off from the nest, and swung herself down through the branches. It was later than she thought. Night would come soon. Now you know that she's afraid of the night because of the bats. But also, will the spider come back? And we know that the spider does because, look, chapter 8 is called The Spider. It's a garden spider. They usually have yellow right there, those yellow dots. It's going to be a situation.